Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the next edition here of the Ashbur webinar series. My name is Stuart Otto, and I am going to be talking with you today about non-compliant annuities that come across your desk for clients who are in a crisis spend down situation. So that we're going to go through the various analysis that the state would go through to try to determine how the annuity is going to be treated and how we can best treat those annuities so they don't become a problem for your clients' spend down process here. So before we get started, I just want to let you know that if you do have any questions as we go through the presentation here, you can send them through to our chat. Amber Hines is monitoring this webinar as well too, so will be monitoring the chat. So if there's any questions that come across, feel free to send them there. And then if we're not able to get to them during the presentation, we should have some time afterwards to field any additional questions that may have come across. So again, we're going to be talking about Medicaid compliant non-compliant annuities that come across your desk, and assess how they're going to be treated by Medicaid purposes. So how do we go about dealing with them, basically? So before we get into that, I did want to talk with you, give you a little bit of background of who I am and our company as well too. So I am a Medicaid planner and annuity specialist here at Ashbur. I specialize in crisis Medicaid planning and Medicaid compliant annuities, and have been doing that for about 10 years or so. In addition to that, I've been with Ashbur for about 1 year at this point. So going on my 1 year anniversary. I'm very excited to be here. So I'm a life and health insurance agent and a veteran of the Wisconsin Army National Guard. And also in my free time, I do run my own small little music business down here in Florida. I've been doing that since about 2021, kind of off and on right now with that, but something I'd like to do on the side there just to, enjoy life a little bit. So, so Ashbur, what we do is we specialize in Medicaid compliant annuities and crisis Medicaid planning. So in addition to that, we also offer complimentary planning assistance and spend down support. We aren't just the supplier of the annuity. We can be in certain scenarios if the attorney is comfortable with the annuity that they want to purchase, but a lot of times we do provide that additional support with the spend down service, if you will. So in addition to that, we're a proud provider of A-rated carriers with all of our Medicaid compliant annuities, even our short-term, our less than 12 months, 6 months, our 2-month annuities. So all of our Medicaid compliant annuity providers are A-rated. And additionally, we do have over 15 years of experience in the industry as well. All right, so give you a little introduction on the rest of our team here. Amber Hines is our president and CEO. She's been doing this kind of work for over 15 years and has started Ashbur about 5 years ago. We just had our 5-year anniversary on April 1st of this year. In addition to that, Amber's also a Medicaid planner and annuity specialist. She is also our in-house expert on long-term care insurance and pre-planning for Medicaid as well. She's a licensed insurance agent all across the country, Series 65 license as well too. And if you do want to reach out to her with any case support or anything like that, just feel free to email her there as well. All right, so our products, we have, let's go ahead and start here. 1 second. All right, so our products, we primarily provide Medicaid compliant annuities for individuals. That's where our bread is buttered, basically. But we do also offer tax deferred annuities, which we primarily use, I would say, in the state of Texas, but we do offer that on a national scale as well too. And then we also have a couple whole life insurance products. One of them is an irrevocable funeral trust, which is just like a whole life policy, except that you're irrevocably signing the funds to to the funeral expenses for the insured. And then we've got traditional whole life insurance policies, primarily in states like North Carolina and Mississippi. That is because they have a higher face value limit than most other states, where the face value limit is typically $1,500 for everybody. And then we do also, as I mentioned, offer long-term care insurance as well too.
Sure,
All right.
this is
sorry.
Amber. For some reason, it's saying that we're waiting to view your screen as of like 2 minutes ago when you turned off your webcam. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. All right, that was I think I was trying to get my primary screen off here, and so I hit a wrong button, I'm pretty sure. So my apologies for that.
That's okay. Thanks.
All right. So the services that we provide complimentary case analysis, as I mentioned, as well as annuity quotes. And then when the client's ready to proceed with the annuity, we do offer the spend down support. That can be as simple as going through the Medicaid annuity documents with your office, or that can also mean assisting with such things, more complicated transactions like IRA transfers or rollovers. And then in addition to that, we also offer assistance with processing death claims and fair hearing support. All right, and then introducing the rest of the staff here. This is Jessica. She's our primary point of contact for the new business department. She's been doing this line of work, reviewing applications for Medicaid compliance for nearly 15 years now. We do have the ability to send all our applications by email or fax, or email, fax, or by regular mail as well too. And then our policies, our turnaround time is typically done in as little as 2 business days. So it's a fairly quick process. And then for our death claim assistance, we typically work that through Lindsay, who's been with our office since January. She's the coordinator of the death benefit. If your clients who purchased an annuity would ever pass away, she would coordinate or contact the state directly, or work with the state, work with the insurance company, and work with the beneficiaries as well as the attorney in ensuring that we get the claim settled in a timely manner as well. And then last but not least, here is Todd Watley. As many of you may know who he is a elder law attorney in Arkansas who was the previous past president of the National Elder Law Foundation. He's been doing this type of work for over 20 years and has been very successful, and is our primary contact as it pertains to any sort of fair hearing support that we may need. So if your client's ever denied Medicaid because of one of our annuities, we will be there to provide whatever assistance is necessary to ensure that that annuity is, to ensure that that Medicaid application is interpreted correctly. And then, so for our crisis Medicaid planning, for those of you who have not been worked in this industry or new to the industry, basically when there's an immediate financial need for long-term care services, so if someone's in like a nursing home and their expenses far exceed their income, then we can look into Medicaid as a potential solution towards those rising costs of care. And usually in our scenario, when one of these cases comes across our desk, we are working with a client who has too many assets to qualify for Medicaid, but they meet the other requirements like the age requirement, disability, and income requirements. And then this crisis planning is also very likely the final opportunity or the last resort for a client to execute an asset protection plan. So they could have potentially done any sort of estate planning maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but decided against it. And then now they're in a situation where they can't protect assets anymore. We still provide that last solution for them. So we're going to talk a little bit about that asset protection plan today, but specifically, we're going to talk about how certain annuities impact or can impact this plan and how we make sure that it doesn't impact this plan. So before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about what the annuity basics are. I believe in having a good foundation or foundational knowledge of annuities is a great path forward to really understanding and evaluating the mechanics of an annuity. So at its core, I would call it a 30,000 foot view perspective, if you will. There are two basic types of annuities on the market. They're called immediate annuities and deferred annuities. And so when I think of an immediate annuity, I think of the word income, because that's what the immediate annuity is designed to provide, is income. There's really no cash value, and there's really no ability to revoke any of the policy provisions with an immediate annuity. This type of annuity is designed to provide income during retirement. So a lot of times an immediate annuity could be the result of, say, a pension plan or 401k when someone retires, and it provides a stream of income. That could be a very common use of an immediate annuity. In addition to that, the immediate annuity is structured with periodic income. It's not set up to take distributions, if you will. It is a hard structured income stream. Basically, it's more like a structured settlement than it would be like a deferred annuity, basically, which is essentially the complete opposite of an immediate annuity. So the deferred annuity is designed to provide growth with the premiums that are being paid. There is a cash value with it. So in this scenario, or I would say deferred annuities almost always are never Medicaid compliant because they have that cash value. So they're going to fail any asset test that we put on them, basically. And then the deferred annuity, the real basic element behind it, what it's designed to do is to grow funds for retirement. And then there's various ways as well too with a deferred annuity that you can grow that asset. You can have a fixed interest rate, you can have a variable rate, or you can have it indexed based on the market. So you can really get complicated and get neat, if you will, with a deferred annuity, because there's a lot more things you can do as far as growing the product. All right, so taking that a step further, going over the life of the annuity contract, it typically starts as a deferred annuity. So any annuity most of the time is going to start as a deferred annuity. It can be funded with a single premium, or it can be funded with periodic premium payments. That's what the majority of deferred annuities would be funded with, is periodic payments. So you might start a deferred annuity at the age of 30 or at the age of 40, and you might be required to make annual payments on it per year for maybe 10, 20 years or so. But as the money sits, as those premiums sit, interest will accumulate, growing the asset. As I mentioned, you can have different rates of growth there. It can be a fixed rate, or it can be more variable, which is more investment, mutual funds, stocks and bonds, things like that, or the indexed rate as well too. And then the deferred annuity a lot of times is going to stay in the deferred status, or is going to stay existing for essentially for 30 or 40 years, as it is a retirement vehicle. So you start putting money into it when you're younger, and then as time grows, it gets bigger and bigger. And then with any deferred annuity, you're going to come to an annuitization date, or a maturity date, basically, or maybe like another way to call it would be like a climax for the deferred annuity. And so what I always tell people, that maturity date is a very important date for Medicaid purposes. Basically, that maturity date is a conversion of that deferred annuity into an immediate annuity. So this is kind of a very simple graphic illustration of what the life of an annuity might look like. You see the funding over 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. As the money in the account continues to grow, then you get to that climax, that point of annuitization there. And then once you execute the annuitization, then essentially you created an immediate annuity that again has no cash value and is just providing income at that point. All right, so a little bit about the immediate annuity. It is typically funded with a single premium. It can either come from a deferred annuity, or it can come from non-annuity funds. So as we just talked about the life of the annuity contract, a lot of times you build that deferred annuity over 30 or 40 years, and then you annuitize it right away into an immediate annuity. Or you can just take cash from a checking account, for example, or a savings account, and annuitize that as well and make it an immediate annuity. So those annuities are typically referred to as a single premium immediate annuity. So it's going to provide income right away, and it's purchased with one premium payment. That's where our Medicaid compliant annuities are structured from. They're structured as SPIAs. So moving on with the immediate annuity, you can have any number of periodic payment options. Typically there's four. You have monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, and annual payout schedules. Most of the time for our annuities, we see monthly, but when you get a annuity across your desk, you might see annuities that have quarterly, semi-annual, or annual payments sometimes too. That's not a terribly uncommon thing to see with those annuities that clients might have. Some other common features of an immediate annuity is that it's irrevocable to all the policy provisions, and there's no immediate cash value, essentially. So like I said, it's a structured income stream, and it's very difficult to maneuver, to change, or edit it, basically. So one of the other features I noticed, and this is something a lot of times that may create an issue with Medicaid eligibility, is that the annuity may be assignable. But we'll get into the specifics on how to handle that when and if that comes across. As far as the payments go on the immediate annuity, because that's what it's all about again, is the income. There are 3 payout options for immediate annuities. Now, other insurance companies can complicate that by creating other payout options, but these are the 3 general basic annuity payout options. The first one is life only, which is a good option if you want income for the rest of your life. But the problem with that payout option is there is no death benefit associated with it. So if you pass away early on in the annuity payout, you're not going to realize as much of a benefit from that policy as you would if you did something like a life with period certain or period certain annuity. Those 2 payout options come with a death benefit because the period certain guarantees a period of time in which the annuity company will make payments on that annuity. So a lot of times you might have a life with 5-year period certain, or you might have a life with 10-year period certain. In those scenarios, if the individual were to pass away, say in year 3, there's still guaranteed a number of years or number of payments that still need to be made before that individual passed away. So if that were to be the case, then a death benefit could be claimed in that scenario. So a period certain, though, different from a life with period certain is just, it's not guaranteed for life. It is simply a period certain annuity, meaning that it is going to have a specific time period for its payout. So if you structure it for 5 years, perhaps, then if you outlive that 5-year term, then the annuity essentially ceases to exist. So in addition to that, you can also choose the payout value as well. You can choose between a level pay annuity or a balloon style payment, basically. So level pay is basically where all the payments are equal from beginning to end. That's what we want for Medicaid purposes, but that's something we have to evaluate when we go through this annuity product, or when we go through the evaluation of this annuity. In addition to that, the balloon annuity is typically what we call an interest plus 10 payout. Basically, to simply put, the balloon annuity provides very little income for the majority of the contract until you get to the last month of the contract. That's where a larger payment can be made at that time. Those are typically not Medicaid compliant payout structures. We want the level pay option. And then the inflation rider is an important piece of information as well when evaluating, because with an inflation rider, you can create an increase in the income payments on an annual basis. That would violate the level pay provision needed in order to qualify it as a level pay annuity, because you might have a 3% inflation rider or a 5% inflation rider on that annuity. So it'll increase the payments the following year, and that's something we don't want for Medicaid purposes. So what makes an annuity Medicaid compliant? No cash value, so we cannot have a deferred annuity. It has to be a single premium immediate annuity, and it has to be structured within the rules of the Deficit Reduction Act. And I'm going to, at the bottom here of this slide, this is one of my favorite sayings that I essentially created when I've trained others to do this. I'm a big math guy, so if you recognize the theme of this is based off of the geometry class lesson that we all learned, where we know that a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not always a square. So in this, the theme that I want you to understand from this is that all Medicaid compliant annuities are immediate annuities, but not all immediate annuities are Medicaid compliant. So that's very important to understand, because when you get an immediate annuity across your desk, it's not necessarily going to be Medicaid compliant, because we talked about a lot of the stuff already about what needs to make it compliant. So that's a good phrase, I guess, to kind of use. I like to use that. So the DRA requirements for an annuity, we all know these. It needs to be irrevocable, non-assignable, actuarially sound. It needs to provide equal payments and list the state as beneficiary for the total amount of medical assistance provided to the Medicaid applicant. So some of the characteristics of a Medicaid compliant annuity: again, no cash value, it needs to be irrevocable and non-assignable, no life payout options, must be period certain, no inflation riders, and no balloon payments, as they both violate the equal payment provision. All right, so getting into the actual review of these annuity contracts here, how I like to break it down is I like to break it down into two tests. The annuity has to pass two tests in order for it to be Medicaid compliant, in my opinion here. It needs to pass the asset test, and it needs to pass the transfer test. If it fails either one of those, it's going to create a problem for your spend down plan, essentially. So we need to look at these annuities from the perspective that, is it going to pass an asset test for Medicaid? Is it going to pass the transfer test for Medicaid? So I'm going to go over both of these tests with you, and hopefully create a little bit easier process for evaluating that. So essentially, there's two things, or two triggers, that could make an annuity an asset. So the two triggers are the cash surrender value, and then the secondary market value. The secondary market, if you're not familiar, is essentially a group of companies that buy structured income streams for 40 or 50 cents on the dollar. So like structured settlements, annuities, loans, things like that. J.G. Wentworth and Peachtree would be great examples of companies, popular companies that are on the secondary market. So when you hear that commercial, that little jingle from J.G. Wentworth on TV, that's what they do. They give you a lump sum cash for your income, but they give it to you at like 40 or 50 cents on the dollar. So on the annuity policy, so when you have an annuity in your office that you're looking to evaluate as an asset, we want to first check the annuitization date, which we talked about. We want to evaluate when that date occurred. If that date occurred if that date has not occurred yet, then you most likely have a deferred annuity. Because if it's not annuitized, then again, you're going to have a deferred annuity. You want to check the deferred annuity for a cash value, or check the annuity for a cash value. It's always good to confirm that with the insurance company, but if you've got a policy, or if you've got statements still coming into the mail that show that there's X amount value on this policy, chances are those are strong indicators that you have a deferred annuity. So that typically is going to create an issue for Medicaid eligibility, because it has a cash value. It's going to fail the asset test. The only exception is if you are in a state that exempts IRAs from the asset calculation. So you want to check your client's you want to check your client's annuity, you want to check its tax qualified status. So if it's funded with IRA dollars and you're in a state that exempts these assets, then you can treat the annuity as unavailable because you're in a state that exempts it based on the tax status of the annuity. Not the fact that it's an annuity itself, but the tax status is what would make it compliant. However, if the annuitization date is already commenced, you more than likely are going to have an immediate annuity. So what you would need to do if you don't have it already is request an updated policy information from the insurance company. Now, sometimes when there's a conversion from a deferred annuity to an immediate annuity, there's not always going to be a new policy that's sent out, but you should still be able to obtain documentation from the insurance company pointing out what the new provisions are. And again, you want to make sure you want to make sure it has zero cash or surrender value, and you want to make sure that it is non-assignable, which essentially means you can't change the ownership on it. So there's going to be a specific provision in every annuity contract called essentially the assignability provision. It's going to tell you whether or not you can transfer ownership to somebody else. For it to be compliant and for it to pass the asset test, basically, it needs to be a non-assignable annuity. Because if that annuity is assignable, then it has a value in the secondary market, and that can create a problem for your client's eligibility. However, if you do have an immediate annuity that is both irrevocable and non-assignable, you most likely can prove that it has passed the asset test. However, there are a handful of states that do require denial letters, or we call them refusal letters as well too. Basically, these are letters that the state wants from reputable companies that buy these types of structured income streams. They want those three companies to show them that the annuity has no cash value by offering $0 on it, basically. So if you're in one of those states, and I think of Alabama, I think of Kansas as probably two of the most common states I've seen that in. Wisconsin, I think there's some areas where that's required as well too. Then you can contact our office to obtain these letters basically sweat-free. Instead of you having to go contact J.G. Wentworth or Peachtree to try to get a denial letter basically from them, we can do that as we've got contacts from other companies that buy these annuity products. So they will typically provide us with the letter saying that there's no ability to purchase the annuity because it is non-assignable. We can't assume ownership of the contract. But just to let you know, if you're in one of these states, you may need to get 3 of these letters to prove that the policy is non-assignable. All right, and here's a nice, lovely flow chart here that we've created that pretty much kind of encapsulates, what we kind of talked about. So this is a handout that we have available in PDF form. If you do ever want a copy of this for your office, just let me know, or let Amber know, and we can make sure you get that for you as well. I think it's a great flow chart to ask the questions that are needed to get you to the solution that you need. All right, so the asset test is pretty easy because all we're doing is verifying zero cash value and verifying non-assignability. The transfer test is a little bit more complicated. The transfer test comes from the look back rule, as we're all familiar with. So knowing that we have to do a 5-year look back on all transactions and evaluate those transactions for its properness, if you will, whether if it's an improper transfer, whether if it's a compliant transfer, basically. Once again, the big important date here is going to be the maturity date on the annuity that you're evaluating. So basically, you have to look at the maturity date as that transaction date. So if that maturity date has occurred over 5 years ago, then you don't have to worry about the look back period, because it already passes the transfer test because it's outside the 5-year window. But if it is within the 5-year window, then we need to continue evaluating further. So I like this slide a lot because it provides you with 2 questions that I think can really save you a lot of time in doing this transfer test evaluation. The first one that we already talked about is the annuitization date within 5 years. If it is outside the 5 years, then you don't need to do any more work on it because it is outside the 5-year window. All you need to do is make sure that it is non-assignable and that it has 0 cash value. And then that would pass both tests right then and there very quickly. But the second question you want to ask, if the annuitization date is within 5 years, you want to ask whether or not the annuity funds are tax qualified. And if they are tax qualified, you should just be able to list the state or add the state as beneficiary in the appropriate position to ensure that it is compliant with Medicaid. And the reason for that is because annuities that are funded with tax qualified dollars often fall under less restrictive rules than annuities. So your IRAs, 401ks, pensions, 403bs, 457 plans are all tax qualified accounts. These annuities typically do not need to be irrevocable, non-assignable, actuarially sound, or provide equal payments. That's a federal standard. So I know there's several states that have taken a little bit more harder position on that based on the language in their own specific manual. But from a federal level, you should be able to, in this situation, add the state as beneficiary and ensure that it passes the transfer test. However, if we are in a scenario where we have a non-qualified annuity and the annuitization date is within 5 years, then we've got a lot more work to do here in evaluating this annuity. So there's maybe, I believe, don't have the exact number, maybe like 5 or 6 questions here that need to be evaluated. And what I would recommend doing is the next few questions, when you have an annuity that you're evaluating and you're asking these questions, you're going through the contract, you need to go through all the questions first before trying to correct any of the issues one by one with the insurance company. So the first question that we ask is there any language in the policy allowing the owner to revoke or amend the provisions? This is probably the hardest part about the evaluation because you may have to go through the entire contract and review each provision and addendums. So if the answer is yes, then I would fear you have a divestment. So one of the solutions would be to try to amend the provisions to be irrevocable. But again, we wouldn't want to contact the state or contact the company without going through the other questions. But if all the policy provisions are irrevocable, then we want to ask ourselves, can the owner transfer the policy to a third party? So basically, we're checking the assignability clause. So if that's the case, if it is assignable, then you might have a double problem because you might have a divestment and you might have an available resource as well too, because we talked about that earlier with the assignability. So that's another one where if it is assignable, you can contact the company to make it non-assignable as well. But so far, if you've answered no to both of these questions, we're still potentially in the clear. So we would move on to the actuarial sound test. Now, the unfortunate part about this provision is there's no provision in the annuity contract that's going to specify that whether or not the annuity is actuarially sound. We have to take the annuity part itself and evaluate it under our interpretation of what actuarially sound is. So we need to ask ourselves, does the annuity provide a positive rate of return within the client's Medicaid life expectancy? So we don't really need to calculate the actual rate of return. All we need to know is whether or not it's positive or negative. So the real simple way to do that is just determine the client's Medicaid life expectancy using whatever tables are you need to do for your state. And then take the monthly payout from that annuity and multiply it by the number of payments within the client's Medicaid life expectancy, or the total pay, or whatever the total payout or number of payments are in the contract. If the total payout is greater than the amount annuitized, the rate of return is positive. So let me give you an example. Example one here, and I do two examples here really quick, and they're very similar. So it'd be kind of an easy picture here. So if you have an annuity that you have an annuity that you're evaluating, and the client initially paid $150,000 into this immediate annuity, and was structured to provide 1,000 payments or $1,000 per month for essentially 120 months. It's going to provide a total payout of $120,000. This number right here, the total payout, is less than this number here. So the annuity does not provide a positive rate of return because the total payout is less than the original premium paid. However, if we took another case example here, instead of $150,000 as the original premium paid, we use $100,000. And then we have the same number of payments and the same payment amount, total payout of $120,000 here. This is a scenario where you would have a positive rate of return because, again, the total payout in this case is greater than the original premium paid. So just to reiterate on the rate of return, the owner of the annuity needs to get more out of the annuity than what they put into it within their Medicaid life expectancy. And then here's a very quick and easy example of how to calculate Medicaid life expectancy. This is based off of the SSA charts. So we have a client, Mrs. Johnson, whose the age of her nearest birthday is 94. And obviously she's female. So the SSA charts, if you've seen them before, the female side is here on the right, and then the male side is here on the left. So when we look at age 94, we all the way down here, we see 3.45 years for Mrs. Johnson's life expectancy, or 41.4 months. If Mrs. Johnson was a male, or if her husband had these same exact age and date of birth, his life expectancy would be 2.94 years. So that's how gender impacts one's Medicaid life expectancy. So bringing it back to the original question here and bringing it back to the evaluation within the transfer test, does the annuity provide a positive rate of return? If the answer is no, then you have a divestment and you have a situation where it's probably very difficult to maneuver that. So we'll talk about another solution a little bit later on. However, if the answer to that question is yes, then you just want to check the annuity term to make sure it's within the client's Medicaid life expectancy. If you're answering yes to both questions, then you have an actuarially sound annuity. But if you don't, then you would have a divestment and a potential issue in resolving that. So again, you want to check the appropriate life expectancy chart in your state, and you want to ensure that the payout type is a period certain, no life options, because life doesn't stretch out for their specific life expectancy. It can stretch out for a term that's much longer than that. All right, so looking at the next three questions here, this is the equal payment requirement. So the first question asking, are all the payments equal? If yes, then we're sufficient here. But if not, then we've got another potential divestment issue. Is there an inflation rider built into the contract? If yes, again, another potential divestment issue. But if no, is there a balloon payment? If no, so if we said yes to the first question and then no to the last two questions, then we would have passed the equal payment provision. But if there is a balloon payment, then you potentially have a divestment. All three of these, if there's an issue with one of them, you have a potential divestment issue, and it's probably not a simple resolution. Again, there's a later slide where we're going to go over sort of a final resolution to this issue. And then the last question that we ask, if we met the equal payment provision, if we met the actuarial sound test, if the annuity is non-assignable and irrevocable, is the state listed as beneficiary in the appropriate position? I always kind of laugh at that a little bit. I'm still waiting for the day where we get an annuity that comes across our desk to be evaluated that has the state listed as beneficiary. I've never seen that before, but I would kind of laugh if we did, because no one is going to buy a non-Medicaid annuity unless the state is beneficiary. But it'd be funny to see if they did. But anyway, if it's not listed as beneficiary, then again, we just need to add the state to satisfy that requirement. It's typically not a hard thing to do. But if yes, then if yes to that question, and then yes to all the other Medicaid compliant provisions, then you don't have a divestment. So if you get to that scenario where you can say that you've passed the transfer test by answering correctly on all of these questions, and you don't have an asset, and you made sure you passed the asset test as well too, the annuity will essentially be treated as income only. So the income payments will count towards the Medicaid copayment. If it's a Medicaid applicant, if it's community spouse, then it'll just count as income to the community spouse. But it will count towards the client's Medicaid eligibility. And here's our transfer test for annuities, the flow chart, if you will. Again, I like flow charts a lot. I think they're a nice recap, nice simple way to go through this process here. But I do think with the transfer test, there's a little bit more to understand about the policy, the provisions that impact actuarially sound and the equal payment requirement. Knowing what those clauses are, what those provisions are very important in evaluating those DRA requirements. And then the last two slides, first one, we're going to talk about changing ownership of the annuity. When you have an assignable annuity, you essentially have three options. You can make it non-assignable, or transfer ownership, or sell the annuity on the secondary market. If you're doing the transfer of ownership, or you're selling the annuity, contact our office, and we will obtain offers to buy the annuity product. So what this will do is provide you with a value for the client. So the client will essentially get a letter from the company saying, we'll buy your annuity for X amount of dollars. And then it's up to your client to either give that annuity to one of their heirs, which in that case that would result in a penalty equal to the market value listed on that letter, or they can sell it and execute that transaction with that company on the secondary market, and that money will be put in the client's account, which would later need to be spent down basically. So if you're doing either one of those scenarios, contact us to help expedite that process for you. And then lastly, we talked about failing the actuarial sound test and the equal payment provision. This is where this would come in handy for those scenarios, but it may also come in handy too if they're having any other issues with it. So basically, this is a scenario where you can request a refund of the sale of the annuity, essentially a refund of the original premium paid, if you will. A lot of attorneys do end up resorting to this if there are such issues that cannot be rectified in the evaluation process. So you can draft a letter that talks about the improper sale of the annuity, because more than likely this client was 70 or 80 when they had it annuitized and probably never gave two thoughts about Medicaid. So it can potentially be construed as an improper sale. It can also be construed as an existing policy that is detrimental to the owner. So a lot of times the insurance companies sympathize with that and will and will provide that refund to the client, which is a nice way to cure that annuity outright, essentially, and basically return the asset to the client for spend down purposes. And just to recap here, obviously when you get annuities that come across your desk, first thing you want to do, ask for a copy of the policy if you don't already have one, because then we need to evaluate that to determine whether or not it is first of all an immediate or deferred annuity. Then we need to evaluate whether or not the annuity passes the asset test or the transfer test. Bottom line is if there's anything at all, any questions that you have in reviewing it, and a lot of attorneys do use us in reviewing annuities on your behalf, we're more than happy to do that. That is a free service that we provide. Whether it results in a Medicaid annuity sale for us or not, we're more than happy to do that for our clients because we believe in doing the right thing for the client, and if we've got the knowledge to be able to help provide any support in that process, we're more than happy to do it. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Amber, who we're going to kind of recap here and then see if there's any questions that need to be answered at this point.
Awesome. Thank you, Stuart. Let me see if we have any questions that have been typed in. I know we usually get questions afterwards about copies of the materials, which I did upload to the handouts portion. So if anybody is looking for a copy of the slides, you can download those from the GoToWebinar dashboard. We are also recording this, so we can send a copy of the recording to you as well if you need that. I'm not seeing any questions yet, but I will wait a couple of minutes and see if anybody submits any questions. I know going back to Stuart, the beginning of the webinar, when you introduced each of us with the Ashburn team, we frequently get questions about whether our office will help with the death claim process. If clients do purchase annuities through our office and the state is listed as a beneficiary, that is something that we will work directly with the state on to make sure that there either isn't a claim, or if there is a claim against the annuities, we would work with the law firm as well as the state to get that handled so that it's not an additional item that is required of the law firm that we're working with. So that's something that we will reach directly out to the state to handle and to keep you informed as to whether there is a claim or not.
Yep, it's a good point too, and I think it's a really great service too, because I think it's unique in this industry to have someone who's able to do that and help with that claim process, because it can be convoluted for the client to be reaching out directly to the state to try to resolve the matter. And like I said, Lindsay does a great job on that, and definitely streamlines these claims, because when you involve the state, especially if there's a claim, it can definitely convolute the process.
Yeah, and then Stuart, do you want to just talk on, I know we get the question a lot of what is the shortest term annuity that we can do, and why would somebody purchase a short term annuity in a Medicaid context, and just relate that back to the state being a beneficiary?
Sure. Yeah, the shortest term we can do really is 2 months. And someone would use a 2-month term in a situation where they have a Medicaid period of ineligibility, maybe of 2 months or so. We can use a 2-month Medicaid annuity to provide income to first spend down and qualify them for Medicaid, but for the gift, but to also use that annuity to pay through a Medicaid penalty period, basically. So we're protecting that transfer in the process. So we do that often with gifting plans. If a client has a certain spend down that they need to get rid of and try to protect something, we can make that happen with an annuity as short as 2 months. And then so like in a scenario like that or like a gifting plan, for example, a lot of times the state is not recouping anything from the annuity because the state is not providing benefits during the penalty period. And how a gift and annuity is structured typically is so that the annuity expires when the penalty period expires. So a lot of times if a client passes away during the penalty or during the term of that specific type of case, then there's not really a claim to be had. So a lot of times we see our claims based on more so community spouse cases, and that can have an impact on how long or how short we go with our annuity terms.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Stuart, did you have anything else to add? I'm not seeing any other questions that have been typed in, but obviously if anybody thinks of questions afterwards, you can reach out to Stuart or I either through email or give us a call. Our contact information is on the screen. But I don't have anything else to add unless you do, Stuart.
No, I don't. I just want to reiterate too that especially when you kind of go through the transfer test, there's a lot of questions and a lot of things to kind of look for. So it's always great to have second eyes on it. So again, I know you as well. We're both more than happy to take on any non-compliant annuity matters and try to offer our opinion on it and offer a workable solution as well too, because it can be very complicated to go through that process, especially if you've not really been exposed to annuities in your line of work. So knowing what those provisions are, what provisions you need to be looking at, and how that impacts DRA is what's really key, I think, in this process when you're evaluating these annuities.
Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you need anything from us, feel free to reach out either by phone or email, and make sure to tune in to our June webinar. We're going to have Attorney Todd Watley on next month talking about Medicaid applications and what you should do if your client gets a Medicaid denial. We greatly appreciate everybody's time and tuning in today. Thank you and have a great day. Thanks, Stuart.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.